Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and such a joy and a delight. I was just telling this guy, good friend of mine offline, when you record conversations with friends, with people that you know and trust, the conversation just feels different. The deliverable is different. The product is different. I think the impact is different. Today is one of those opportunities. I've got world champion performance coach, U.S. Olympic gold medalist coach, two-time NBA world champion coach, Brendan Suhr, joining us on the podcast today. Some of you know Brendan, you know his background. He coached with Chuck Daly, maybe the best basketball team to ever be assembled. You know them as the Dream Team. Brendan knows them as former players. Guys like Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, Dennis Rodman. Brendan has worked with and coached some of the top athletes on the planet. And now he coaches top leaders all across the world. And he's in boardrooms and working with corporations, does keynote speaking, coaching in the corporate world, still does a lot of work in the sports space. And he's the founder of Coaching You. We're going to talk about Coaching You today. I actually met Brendan through our mutual friend, dear friend, John Gordon. And I was fortunate enough to speak at Brendan Suhr's NBA front office event out in Las Vegas. But you want to talk about a person who's connected, who understands the art of building relationships. Brendan is and should be leading a mastermind class in relationship building. This guy is a world-class relationship builder. He's a dynamite coach. He's a great human. He's a family man, and he's become a friend of mine. Welcome to the show, Brendan Suhr. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate it, my friend. After that intro, I think we should stop, and I'll leave now. I think I don't know if we can do justice to it, but you're a very, very special friend, and I'm honored to be on with you, man. This is good. I love to share with the people on your network of your people, just the thing that we all want to do is just get better, to grow and improve, and we all have those of us have a growth mindset. And, when I was coaching the Pistons and the Dream Team and other teams, I'm not a tenth of the coach I am that I am now. I'm way better now. They got a bad version of me as a 36, 37-year-old. I'm so much better now because I've never stopped learning, because I keep wanting to get better. So that's my message to every one of us, is that, John Wooden, I think, said it so well, Jordan. He said, it's what you learn after you think you know it all that's going to make you better. And that's in any field. And I remember listening and hearing that I was a college student, and it's some things never leave you. And that was one of them.
It's funny. Just yesterday on the podcast, we recorded a conversation with your dear friend, a guy that I know because of you, Kevin Eastman, championship coach for the Boston Celtics with Doc Rivers. And we literally shared that exact same quote in our conversation. And I think that quote embodies the way that Kevin lives. I think it embodies the way that you live. And I want our listeners to hear this. We're out in Las Vegas, NBA Summer League. You've got Eric Musselman, Brian Wright, GM of the Spurs, Musselman, coach of the Razorbacks. I mean, you just sort of know everyone in the basketball world, 30 plus years of coaching and at the highest level. But yet you have this humility about you and this ability to make it about everybody else, and I think that's one of the things that's made you so special over the years is people feel valued in your presence. They feel appreciated. They feel invited and welcomed. And I've certainly felt that from you. It's where I want to start our conversation.
Sure.
I want to start in just talking about humility. I listened to you share a conversation with Ken Coleman from some years ago, and you were talking about the difference between coaching in college and coaching in the NBA. And then you also talked about the difference of, being an assistant coach or a head coach. And you and I had a conversation about servant leadership. And you said, well, as an assistant coach, it was really never about me. It was always about, service to others. It was about service to the players, service to the head coach. You talked about the difference in how much time you have to spend on your craft, doing what you love, the game of basketball, being an assistant in the NBA versus being a head coach or an assistant in college. A hallmark of your existence and your coaching career has been your humility. Would you talk to us a little bit about how you've dealt with humility, how you've dealt with your pride, your ego, and where all that's come from?
I think, Jordan, when Chuck was so successful, and he was basically the best coach in the NBA, which was in its glory years of coaching. And I remember when we went from the Pistons to the New Jersey Nets, we had a press conference in New York City with all the media in New York, and we were going to coach the dream team in 2 months. And they said to Chuck, "Why are you such a great coach?" Which is a fair question. And Chuck said, "First of all, I'm not a great coach. I'm a good coach, maybe when I have great players." So we understand that at the college level, the coach is given all the credit. Okay. In the pros, the players get the credit. And it should be, because they're the ones that are performing. It would be like a CEO of a company saying, that has astronomical sales. The reason we're doing this because of me. It's those guys busting their ass, selling every day, and, becoming evangelists for the product and everything, and loving their customers, and, developing these relationships where people keep buying and investing. I just learned that as an assistant, my job was to be able to, first of all, communicate. I had to learn how to communicate. That's who you are. And if I can't communicate with these guys, it's over. Then they have to see if I'm competent. And if I'm not competent, they're not going to buy into anything I'm telling them, because they'll quickly, NBA players, Chuck had a saying, which I love: you can't fool dogs, kids, or NBA players. I don't care where they went to school. I don't care if they went to school, but they are brilliant with people. And they know if you know what the hell you're talking about. You know this, you work with a lot of NFL players, a lot of college teams, and they can see right through the BS. Not my initials, the real BS. And so if you have competency, then they will listen to you. If you're not competent, they're moving to the next guy to help them. Then credibility comes in. And if you don't have credibility with people, and we always hear the word street cred, which I think is a neat term. I love at my age that I got more street cred than any young coach in the world, because I do, because they know, based on having 20 plus guys in the Hall of Fame and coaching the best teams ever, that I must know what the hell I'm doing. And then it goes to what I call my soft skills. And the soft skills are the things that make the whole thing work. And those are the relationship skills, which start with integrity. If they don't think that I'm truthful to them, it's over. If they don't think they can trust me, it's over, like in any relationship. And then the last one, I borrowed. I never steal. I borrowed from John Gordon. I gave him credit for it once. Now I own it. I love my players. I am here to serve them, and I care for them. And that's the three areas of soft skills that I think you must have to be successful. And if you really have that, you understand that it's all about it. Like, I have 2 kids that are 100 times smarter than my wife and I, not even close. And there are parents that I know that walk around saying, "Oh, my daughter's a doctor, my son's in medicine." They act like it's them that went to med school. They got there to spite us. Okay. So I am so proud of them. And it's their talent, their hard work that got them there. And I'm just happy that we can collaborate and do things together as a group. And I think that's the essence, really, of coaching.
Well, I want to highlight something that you just said. You talked about communication, setting expectations, spend a little bit of time on humility, but I think with humility, you've also been able to communicate so effectively and build relationships. I want to talk about relationships here in a second as well. I believe it to be one of the best sports stories I've ever heard. I think it's maybe one of the best sports stories that exists in the world today. I really believe that. So if you're driving down the road right now and you're like casually listening in your car, I'm going to ask you to stop casually listening and start intentionally listening. Because this is a story. If you lead a team, I don't care if you're not a sports person. If you lead a team, you're going to use this story with your team. You're going to use this story in the workplace, maybe even with your kids. There's a story that you tell, Brendan, about Chuck Daly's initial message to the dream team. And again, if you're not a sports person, let's give context. Chuck Daly and Brendan Suhr coached maybe the world's greatest team. The Redeem team and the Dream team, that's up for debate. You'd say the Dream team, I would too.
Ain't even close.
Ain't even close.
Ain't
Amen.
even close.
Amen. Amen. And so there's this initial message. You all walk into to greet this team for the first time. And I'm going to pause right there and turn it over to you. This is a powerful story.
Yeah. So what the NBA did back then, totally different than now. We had lost in '88 in the Olympics with college players in, I believe it was in Seoul, Korea. And FIBA, the world governing body for basketball, came to the NBA and said, we want the NBA players to play in the Olympics. Before that, it was supposed to be amateurs. And even though there were track and field athletes in other sports that were professional, and David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, said, no way, we don't want to do that. And FIBA voted like 201 to 1, only the US saying no to do it. And the person that headed up FIBA said, the only way we can grow this game and become the best sport, overtake football, meaning soccer, worldwide, is to show what excellence looks like. And Stern then gave in because the purpose, the intentionality of it was the right thing. And what they didn't do is they didn't have tryouts. They just picked a team. And a lot of things happen when you pick a team over a year ahead of when the games are, players get hurt and all that stuff. But we had to keep one college player. We had to have two college assistants to transition in. That was Coach K was an assistant, PJ Carlissimo, a dear friend, who later became an NBA, was also there. Lenny Wilkins, the winningest coach ever in the NBA before Popovich, and Chuck. And I was head of scouting and stuff for the team and, on board. But the thing was, for a year and a half, Chuck and I are flying around the country, coaching the Pistons, and we're traveling overseas and stuff, doing clinics, preparing for the Olympics. And I kept saying, what are we going to say at the first meeting, Chuck? It's so important. You got to set the table. I don't know. He would not share with me anything for a year. And this really pissed me off, to be honest with you, because we were best friends. And I would say it usually after a big win, we'd beat the Lakers, beat the Bulls. And I'd say on the plane coming back to Detroit, what do you think we should do at that meeting? We'll see, and he was the ultimate brevity king. And so finally we're getting down to in the middle of June, right after the finals, we're getting ready to go to La Jolla and outside San Diego and have this meeting. And I'm still pushing him. And he says, relax. I know what I'm doing. And I don't advise leaders to do that, to be honest with you, but it worked for him. And so our hotel was the Sheraton Torrey Pines. And we go in there. And first of all, I see the tables, U-shaped table. Interesting. Very rarely. And even with today's Olympic team with Steve Kerr, he's at the head, players are in rows, classroom style, they call it, I think. And said, Chuck has U-shaped table. He's sitting he's not sitting in the middle. He's sitting in a seat, and all the players and coaches are around him. And that's how he sits. We're all equal, which was interesting. And we're sitting. He doesn't stand to give a talk. He sits there with them, kind of like John Maxwell. Hi, I'm Chuck. I'm your friend. But the Pistons were not friends because we kicked all their asses for years. And so we were the bad boys. But Chuck, they loved Chuck because he was always cool. And so he sat there and now I'm saying, okay, here we go. A year and a half of all this planning. Here we go. He says, guys, and we have 12 players, 1 college player and 11 pros. And he says, listen, if we go there and we don't win the gold medal, none of us can come back in this country. So you have to commit that it's not going to be about you. It's not going to be how many shots you get, how many minutes you play it, how many points you score. It's only going to be about USA winning a gold medal. Then we can all come back into the country. The average NBA game is 48 minutes. The players on our team all averaged over 20 points a game, all average at least 38 minutes a game playing. The Olympic international game is a 40-minute game. So right off the bat, we're in trouble. And he said, do you buy in to your commitment to win a gold medal as being our only objective? Unanimously, yes. Okay, good start. I like that, Chuck. That's good. He said, the second thing I want to mention, it's all I have to talk about, is you have to be on time. And my face, thank God I wasn't sitting directly at that table. I sat behind it. If they could have seen my face, my jaw dropped to the floor. I'm saying for a year and a half, we planned this whole thing, and you're telling them about being on time. And I was actually floored by it, because there was nothing we ever talked about with the Pistons. And he said, and he looked right at Michael. He said, Michael, if you're not on time, that means you don't respect Magic. And Magic, if you're not on time, that means you don't respect Barkley. And he went right on down through the entire team. And I said, holy cow, it's about respect. It's not really about being on time. So the next day we have practice, first day of practice. And that's always exciting at any level, any group. So I go out as a good assistant would, and I check to make sure the bus is there so we can get to practice. And I look outside, it's 11 o'clock practice. It's now 10 o'clock in the morning. Beautiful, gorgeous San Diego day, 72 degrees. And I go outside, there's a bus, beautiful bus. Door is open. I walk on the bus. Of course, it's empty. And I look in the back to make sure it might be our bus. There's one player sitting in the very last seat with his headphone on, and it's Michael Jordan. And I look, and I said, and he can't hear what I'm saying. I just wave at him, and he just nods and waves back. And what I saw is, I said, the best player in the world heard that message, and he didn't embrace it. He got there an hour early. And what I saw from there was, over the next 6 weeks when we were together, we never had a player come less than 15 minutes before departure. And what it showed was not just their commitment to winning, but the respect they had for each other. And I think if you don't have that in the workplace, on any team or any group that you're part of, the respect for each other, it's a non-starter. And,
Amen.
and so it was so, and you talk about something organic, Jordan. That was it, man. I mean, from Chuck doing this without any consultation to come up with this thing, that's what you'd unite us. And I'm talking about, we're in Monaco, we're in Barcelona, and we're playing 10 o'clock at night, and there's never anyone close to being late. That was remarkable.
It is remarkable. And we're talking about maybe the most talked about team, not just in basketball, but in any sport. I mean, you can go back a long ways. This is a group of legendary players with big egos, and you were able to get them to buy in and commit.
Yeah, the thing, Jordan, is if you're like with an NBA team and they're playing a game at 7 o'clock at night, the bus is leaving the hotel at 5 p.m. The star player in every NBA team, I don't care if it was Kobe, LeBron, when they get on the bus at 2 minutes of, or 1 minute of, or exactly at 5, they are pushing the envelope every day. And that's what they did with the Pistons every day. Chuck would, when we were taking our charter planes out of Detroit, Chuck would stay inside the private terminal, and he'd say, when Isaiah's on the plane, come and get me, because we ain't leaving without him. And that's how you had to roll. And to have this happen was so incredible. And it really taught me everything from there. From my life changed from then on.
You've had special access to so many rooms and to so many people. What's maybe one thing, I'm putting you on the spot here. What's one thing about the dream team that summer, working with that group of athletes, that maybe the average person wouldn't know, wouldn't understand about that team?
How much fun they have with each other. How incredible they were with everyone. Best friends on the team, Larry Bird, Patrick Ewing, Knicks and Celtics, center and forward. They were just incredible. And, Michael and Magic always have been friends. They've competed now in the finals. They had a healthy rivalry. But, man, you talk about two cats that when they got on the floor, they just went at each other. even though Magic was at the end of his career, Mike was in his prime. They went after it, and that's what I loved about it. But the 11 of them, the NBA guys, it was like they were on the same team all the time. And the competition back then, it's not like the NBA today where everyone's loving, hugging, and kissing after games. This was like you didn't say anything to the guy after you whipped his butt or got your butt whipped in the regular season. In the regular season, now it's like a love fest, and it wasn't like that then. And it was real. The Pistons hated the Celtics, and the Pistons hated the Bulls, and the Lakers hated the Celtics. I mean, it was competition at its highest, which is cool. But man, when they were together, they were a team.
Do you think that's as good as the NBA's ever been? Like when you go back to, I mean, obviously athletes are continuing to evolve, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, let me say two things. It was a very much a golden era because the stars were great. The players are great. The game was incredibly physical. When they competed in the playoffs, it was a war. I think the fans fell in love. The athletes now are just absolutely incredible. But let me say this also: the best team that I've ever coached was not the dream team, nor was it the Pistons. I'm looking in my office right now. Is the 1990 All-Star game that Chuck and I coached in Miami, and it would have beat the dream team by 30 points. Not even close. See, because Larry Bird was hurt during the Olympics. He was just a shadow of himself. He had hurt his elbow. He couldn't even lift his arm. John Stockton had gotten hurt his leg, and could barely play in the Olympics. So but we had on this team that we had the Eastern All-Stars. I'm looking at the team now. We had Scottie Pippen, Larry Bird, Patrick Ewing, Robert Parrish, Charles Barkley in his prime, Dennis Rodman, who could stop anyone, Isaiah Thomas, Reggie Miller, who didn't miss a shot, Kevin McHale, who had the best back to the basket moves I've ever seen. I coached Dominique Wilkins. Him and Jordan were 1A, 1B as far as highlights. Michael Jordan and Joe Dumars. And so we had the two best defensive players in the world in Rodman and Dumars. Jordan and Pippen also were the most elite defenders. They would have beat the dream team by 30 plus points. That's how good they were.
That's an interesting take. Nobody would guess that.
No one would. But trust me, it wouldn't even be close. Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing. I thought you were going to say the Pistons. The bad boys.
Well, the Pistons would have beat the dream team because we were a better team overall. And we had a lot of depth. But as far as an all-star team, that was special. Let's talk about. Can we talk about the bad boys? Yeah, and by the way, if you're listening and you're thinking, I want to hear from Brendan Suhr some more, you should bring Brendan in to speak to your organization because you're such a gifted storyteller. But what I love about the way that you communicate is you make it practical to other areas of life. Like it's the locker room to the boardroom, Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about teams. We're going to talk about players here in just a little bit. Sure.
What made, in your mind, there's been so much said about the bad boys. I mean, one of the most talked about NBA teams ever, multiple titles, had this sort of attitude and this way about them. And so much has been documented, but I want to hear it from your view. What made the bad boys? And again, if you're not a basketball person, understand this. Early 90s, super physical team, dominant defensively. And Brendan, you had the fortunate opportunity to coach this group of men.
Yeah, so the late 80s, the Lakers, Boston, Portland, they were dominating the league in a great way. And Chicago was coming. And so when I joined them, they had just lost the year before in the seventh game against the Lakers by 2 points in Game 7. So now I come in, and first game I ever coached, Joe Dumars breaks his hand. It's out 5 weeks. And I'm saying this is not going good. We lose a bunch of games. We're the only team in the NBA that has a chartered plane. It goes down. I'm saying, oh man, this is bad. I made a bad move coming from Atlanta to here, man. It is bad. And so, but what I found out over the next 5.5 months, 6 months, was how you win in the NBA. Because I came in thinking there was one way after being in the league for 10 years. I left after that season. I totally philosophically changed everything. It's all about internal leadership. A lot of coaches, especially head coaches, Saban, Belichick, uh, Steve Kerr, they're all incredible, but they are the ones that are given as the reason that you win. You win because of the leadership of your team. It's the same in business and everything else, and I think what we had was 6 leaders out of 12 players on our squad, and they were all different. Isaiah and Lambeer were very vocal. They were loud. They would get in the face of the other players. And they're not yelling at us. They're holding their teammates accountable. There's Joe Dumars, who's the number 2 executive to Adam Silver in the NBA. He's like my role model of all time. He doesn't say a word. He just leads by example every day. You can count on Joe's going to do the right thing every darn day. I remember Chuck Daly told me one day, he said, you can't fall in love with Joe. And because I love this guy because he was what you thought a professional athlete should be. I said, why can't I fall in love with him? And he said, because we might have to trade him someday. I said, you might trade him, but I ain't trading him, but I ain't that smart, but I know one thing, I'm not trading that cat. But, so you find out then you have a Rodman who, didn't even graduate high school. And this guy is like, he takes everyone on the team, all the superstars, holding them accountable. If Isaiah doesn't show up and play, he goes in his face. Where, nowadays players don't confront each other at all.
Yeah.
They don't want to, they might feel they might be put on social media as being, or like bullying, or, the social media will climb on them from, there was no social media back then. It was no texting. It was eyeball to eyeball coaching, right? And Mahorn was physical tough. So I think that went into it, the internal leadership. But the other thing was, Jordan, we had incredible physical toughness and mental toughness. And that's what Chicago didn't have. They didn't have either of it back then. And when they finally broke through, that was after we beat the heck out of Michael physically for a couple of years. He finally figured out, I got to hire someone to help me. And that's when he hired my friend Tim Grover, who's a great guy in our space now, as far as leadership and motivation and stuff. I always teased Timmy that I said, I made you a millionaire by beating up Jordan for you, and Michael knew he had to get stronger. He knew he had to get tougher, and he knew he had to have teammates that had the same mindset. And so I think those were the things that made a difference in what that team was about.
Well, I could talk to you about just the bad boys for another hour, and then the dream team for an hour. We need multiple episodes with you just to talk about the different teams. But I also want to talk about players. And this is just so y'all know, if you're listening, I'm putting Brendan on the spot. So this isn't scripted. I haven't given him all these questions. So you're getting raw and uncut from Brendan Suhr. Who is the smartest player that you've ever coached?
Probably Bill Lambier. Yeah, probably Bill Lambier. He had I think they said at one point, 186 IQ or something. Wow. that was Chuck and me combined. And he was off the charts, and he was not a nice guy. The first day I came in to coach, I gave every player a scouting report for our game that night, and I had been always doing that, and they hadn't done that in Detroit. And I handed them a scouting report. It was like a 2-page deal, two-sided report. I handed the bill, and as I passed it around, he took the paper and he crumpled it up, threw it in the garbage. That was his way of saying, "Let's see how you react now." And but competitive, brilliant, basketball IQ. I mean, he had the whole package except being nice and loving, but as a competitor, I hated playing against him. I loved having him on my team.
So Bill Lambier gets voted smartest. I think I know you're going to answer this one. Who is the toughest?
It's an interesting one. A lot of people wouldn't understand it, but the toughest player actually is Isaiah Thomas, because he's 6'1" from the west side of Chicago. He grew up, his brothers were in gangs, they were drug dealers and stuff like that. It's the most incredible family, great mom, some, some part, 7, 8 kids in the family. Some are in drugs, others turned into a teacher, another one a cop, just incredible people. But Isaiah had to, be tough. He would get more fights than anyone in the league back then. And I remember before our first championship, late in the season, we played at Chicago, and Bill Cartwright, who was a tough guy, set a really bad screen, an illegal screen on Isaiah. And Isaiah, like he would on the west side of Chicago, turned and punched Cartwright right in the head and broke his hand. And that was really good because we had about 8 games to go. And then the playoffs, it was an injury now that you would miss the entire rest of the season in playoffs for. And literally that night when we went back home, I said, I came here to win a championship, and we're going to get knocked out first round. The guy never missed a game the rest of the year in the playoffs. That tells you who he is, and so Isaiah is the toughest.
All right, so we got Bill Laimbeer's the smartest, Isaiah Thomas the toughest. Who's the most electrifying player you've ever coached?
Oh, easily Dominique Wilkins, the human highlight film. I had him in Atlanta, his first 7, 8 years as a pro. There was never anyone, Jordan, that put it on a show like this guy. When him and Jordan would match up, they're both from the eastern part of North Carolina. Dominique is from, I think, Washington, and Michael's from Wilmington, North Carolina. But man, they would just go at it, and it was like, and then they would face off in a dunk contest every year when the dunk contest was really kind of neat, and so it was really, really special, And so he's the most electrifying.
So we got the smartest, we got the toughest, we have the most electrifying. Who was the person that you least enjoyed playing against? The guy that you really didn't want to match up with, didn't want to play against?
Oh, that was easily Michael, Jordan. Even though we had the 2 best defensive players in the world, he could get you at any time. And I mean, literally, in our first time when we had to play them in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it was 1-1, and we were up 17 points at halftime. And next thing you know, he goes for 37 in the second half and 49 for the game. And they beat us by 2 points. And now they're up 2-1 with another game in Chicago. We're in trouble. We're in trouble to advance to the finals. And that was the night afterwards at like 2 a.m. when Isaiah and I developed the Jordan rules to stop my friend Michael. And but he was the guy, man. He's just, it's Kobe, Michael, LeBron, but this cat was special, man.
Well, I would have predicted you to say Michael there. Some of the others were surprises. Here's the question I want to ask you. I have not asked you, but you were pretty close to this dynamic in this situation. So, this documentary comes out, The Last Dance. And there's much said about that relationship with Michael and Isaiah. Mm-hmm. And they're both sort of interviewed. Okay, so if we're going behind the scenes, all access with Brendan Suhr, I'm putting you on the spot. You didn't know I was going to ask this. Talk to us about that dynamic. I mean, those two didn't necessarily get along. What'd you learn? Were there any leadership lessons there that you learned? I mean, tell us about that dynamic.
Well, no, there weren't leadership lessons in The Last Dance. It was very entertaining. It was great and stuff like that. But my knowledge and friendship with Michael and his family superseded that. I coached his 2 sons in college, Marcus and Jeffrey, at the University of Central Florida, UCF. I've known him since he was a rookie in the league. When you have incredible competition that ends with one person's life being just devastated, losing in a playoff series, and the other one advancing, hard feelings happen. And what set our guys off against Mike was when when they finally beat us in 91, I think at one point it was 35 wins for the Pistons, 10 for Michael's Bulls. I mean, it was a lopsided layup, between the two. But then all of a sudden, as the changing of the guard happened, they were up 3-0 against us in the playoffs, with the fourth game being at the Palace of Auburn Hills, our home court. And at a press conference in between game 3 and 4, Michael said, "We will put the league out of its misery tomorrow, and we will beat the Pistons because they were bad for basketball." That really hurt our guys. It's okay to beat us. It's okay but to say that we were bad for basketball, that would, how you take that very personal. Yeah. And so that's what upset them. You could just say, "Hey, we beat them. We're better. No problem." But when you said that, that really upset it. And then the whole thing with walking off with not shaking hands, that happened because the benches were in the wrong spot where we have to go by their bench. But the biggest thing was, as our players were walking off, it was a 20-point game, and our starters were all ready to leave the court as the buzzer hit 0. With about 8 seconds to go, the referee sees that our players are all walking across half court to go towards the locker room. He blows the whistle and stops the game. If he doesn't do that, the game ends and, everyone exchanges. They still wouldn't have shook hands, but that's what happened. Half of our players shook hands. The coaches did and stuff. And they made it out to be the worst act of sportsmanship of all time. First of all, the handshaking at the end of a game at any level is BS. Colleges, it's the worst idea of all time. There's more fights that can happen during that time. Shake hands before the game, like we do internationally, wish each other luck. At the end of the game in the NBA, the coaches salute, wave at each other. Good game. See ya. But what happened there was really bad. Now, fast forward 1 week, they dispose of the Lakers like in 4 or 5 games. They celebrate like crazy, the Bulls on the court, like you should when you win a championship. Every team does. And when they did that, the Lakers walked off. There was no handshake because they were celebrating. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. This is pro sports. So if you're going to get upset by that, but the whole thing stemmed from Michael not showing any respect to our players, to our team. That's what upset them.
Now, your version of that, the accurate, real version told by Brendan Suhr, doesn't create quite the same sizzle on TV,
Michael was the executive producer, and he owned The Last Dance. A lot of people don't know it. He owned the whole freaking deal, man.
Yeah, that's right. It was told the way he wanted it to be told. So,
amen.
Man, this is interesting. I could talk to you about basketball forever, but there's some basketball junkies listening, and they love this. And then there's a few people listening and be like, "Hey, could you get back to some of the leadership stuff?" But I just had to ask you the basketball questions, Brendan.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. So today, and people should know this, you've got an organization called Coaching You that you founded, that you now run. I'm going to be a part of one of your events in Las Vegas, and just the way that you operate, the way that you put things together, first class all the way through. I was so honored to speak at your event. And people should know this. You're not just working with athletes. You're working with coaches. You're working with scouts. You're working with agents. You're working with NBA front office personnel. You're working with a lot of young people. And you've seen so much change in the world of sports, but also in the world of business. I want you to talk to some young people. We have some young people listening to this podcast. They're 20-somethings, 30-somethings, some emerging leaders. What are you seeing about the younger generations? If you were to talk to a group of 20-somethings, say, "Hey, I'd be paying attention to this in your leadership. It's going to help you grow, help you evolve." What would be your message to, Gen Z and millennials about developing as leaders?
Well, I love Gen Z. I love Gen Z group. But you have to understand, and the millennials, of which my 2 kids are, the younger group wants to skip steps. You can't skip steps to get to greatness. I was telling someone on a podcast this week, they said, "How did you ever know you wanted to be a coach?" Well, I said, I knew because I had a great coach in high school, Newby Brown, who's now 90 years old, going to be on ABC, ESPN, this year again at 90. He's the
Wow.
best teacher, coach you could ever have. And he inspired me to say, as all coaches and teachers do, they're usually the most inspirational person in your life when you're young. He inspired me that most of us, when we go to college, have no freaking idea what we want to do. It's normal. That's what you're supposed to be. That's why you go to college. I knew before I entered school, I wanted to be a coach and a high school teacher. That was my whole goal in life. I wanted to be like him. I wasn't going to be as good as him, but I wanted to fill that profession. And I think the biggest thing is that I then spent besides playing in college, my entire summers was spent 10 weeks working at basketball camps, learning the craft of how to coach, how to teach young people. And camps were different than a babysitting service they are nowadays. That's where you went to learn how to play basketball. And I got to work with some of the best coaches at that time in college ball. And I learned, and I also made great relationships by the people I worked with in the summer. And it's a who's who of the people. And almost every one of my jobs early on came from people that I worked at their camps UB, of course. Then I worked for Dick Vitale at his summer camp because he was in a neighboring town in New Jersey. He gave me my first job at the University of Detroit when I was 21 years old. Chuck Daly, when I was 14 years old, was a speaker at 5-Star Camp. When I went there, as the first year they ever had the camp. And we've known each other since I was 14 years old, So you talk about relationships. It was built on substance. It wasn't someone calling up saying, hey, can you hire me? Here's my resume. I've never hired anyone, Jordan, on their resume. When I was with the Knicks in the front office, I would get 1,000 resumes a year for people who want to be an assistant, get in an NBA front office. I never hired one person ever on a resume in any position in 44 years of working in the NBA. And the reason is because a piece of paper doesn't give me any knowledge of who you really are. You can put down where you went to school. Just because you went to an Ivy League school doesn't mean squat to me. Okay, some of the best people I know went to schools that no one had ever heard of. I want to see who the person is. And so, like I always say, one of my taglines is, I've never coached basketball, I coach people. And that's the whole deal. So, but if you have a relationship, the person that applied for a job and said, Jordan Montgomery's recommends me, I call you and you say, you need to talk to this person. That person's getting interviewed. Person, because I trust that person. So relationships, and that's what I try to tell young people, you have to develop your network of relationships so that people know who you are, not a piece of paper.
So good. We've always said connecting people are connected people, and connected people are connecting people. And you've spent your life connecting and adding value to people. And clearly that's worked for you so well.
And Jordan, it was unintentional. It wasn't like, hey, I went to a seminar and I learned that. I read a book and it said it's natural. And I think it has to do with your talent, who you are. I'm a big strength finder person. And, it fits who my strengths are. My talent, not my talent. And that's what I think John Maxwell's the same way. You gravitate to your talent, your strengths. And that's what happens naturally.
You're so right. And it's so much a part of who you are. It's that gift is all over Brendan Suhr, the ability to build relationships, add value, and connect. Okay. Final question here as we're landing this plane. I want to go the other way with this because you're working with so many young people. One of the things that's interesting about your story is you've managed to remain impactful and relevant over a long period of time with people of different generations. Speak to some senior leaders about Gen Z, about millennials. If you want to remain relevant, you want to remain impactful, what are you seeing in senior leaders that they need to be paid attention to about leading the younger generations?
Well, the first thing a leader has to do is learn how to coach. Leadership is, I remember maybe 15 years ago, a dear friend was the head of Ritz-Carlton and Marriott Vacation Club. And he said, our sons played on the high school golf team. And he said, Brenda, I need you to come in and teach my leaders at Marriott Vacation Club how to coach. I said, coach what? He said, Coach, they're people. They don't know how to develop anyone. And so that, I tell you, is the most important thing, is how to develop people. And so here's the way I do it. The first thing I do is every time I coach anyone, whether you're the CEO of the Ritz-Carlton, Chick-fil-A, or you're the principal of the school, or you're the coach of University of Kentucky, University of Florida, or the Chicago Bulls, I ask them two questions. Are you coachable? Are you coachable? And I've never, Jordan, had one person ever tell me they're not coachable. Everyone says, oh, yes, I'm coachable. Great. I said, the second question I asked them, can I be truthful with you? Again, everyone says, absolutely. Of course, I wouldn't want you to lie to me. But what they've done is now give me permission. That's what I look for. They've given me permission, because nowadays, young people push back. They assume when you try to coach them, you're criticizing them. Young people don't take criticism too well because the people delivering it are not very good at it. Okay. And so what I tell them is, all I'm trying to do is help you become better. And I'm going to be truthful with you, because you wouldn't want me to lie to you. You'd never get better if I lied to you. And so whether you're whoever you are, it doesn't matter. I recommend that coaches do that with their own players. It works in every darn field. And it's two questions that you ask them to gain permission. I use it with everyone, including my own two children. I do not use it with my wife. I don't, so I know it wouldn't go well, so we don't do it with her. Everyone else is flawless. Trust me.
It's, are you coachable, and can I be truthful?
Yes, too simple.
Leadership gold. Leadership gold.
Are you coachable, and can I be truthful with you? Once you've told me you are coachable, then can I be truthful with you?
Yeah.
And the response is overwhelming. I never have a pushback from anyone, any player, any executive wants that, because they've given me permission.
What an awesome leadership lesson about building trust. You know, if trust is the number one standard in moving people to action, then you've just set a foundation for leading, teaching, instructing, and giving feedback. That's brilliant. That's one of the better things shared on our podcast ever. And
wow,
this has been a joy. and here's the thing: I don't always say this or think this. Of course, I love all of our guests. We got to run this back. I want to do episode 2. If you're gracious enough to give us more time, some point over the next 12 months, I want to do episode 2 with Brendan Suhr.
Let's do one a month. John can do it. We don't have to do it. We do 30 minutes once a month, keep the people good. John will do it. Yeah. Just hit me back and we'll roll, man.
Let's go. Hey, I'm in. I'm all the way in. Hey, there's people listening. They're going, man, I want to bring this guy in to speak. I want to hear him more. I want to learn from him. Where do people go to find out more about Brendan Suhr?
You have to contact my agent, Jordan Montgomery at Montgomery Companies. No,
you can do that too.
Hey, just hit me at brendansuhr@gmail.com. I answer all my own texts, tweets, phone calls, everything. So, I'm thrilled to come in. I'm at the beautiful age where now all I'm trying to do is help our damn world get better. That's all, man. I want to do that, whether they're young people or middle of the road young people like me and you. I had to include you. You ain't close to me, but I just want to help your team and your company and yourself perform better, because if you perform better, your company's going to light it up.
No question. Everybody gets better when the leader gets better. And you helped us all get better today. And I want to thank you for your investment of time and energy. More than anything, man, thanks for being my friend. What you just said about availability and accessibility, I'll have our listeners know that's true. So if you want to learn from Brendan, you want more of Brendan, reach out. He just gave you his email address. That doesn't always happen. We're also going to add my
damn cell phone if they want that too. I don't know.
We'll add your social media handles in the show notes. Man, I just enjoy hanging out with you. This has been so much fun. And thanks for being who you are.
Oh, I appreciate Jordan. And we're going to stop on our drive, and we're going to stop at a Chick-fil-A and we'll get a Sunjoy. So we'll enjoy the rest of our conversation.
A Chick-fil-A, a Sunjoy, a conversation about basketball and leadership. Man, you're the best. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Jordan.
This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being here. If you found any value in this episode, I would love it if you would rate, review, subscribe to this podcast in an effort that we might move our mission of impact forward. I also want to say thank you to our producers, John Choate and James Roth of Storyline Multimedia, for all of the work that they do behind the scenes to make this podcast go. Be well, be great. Have a wonderful day.